it's me. Join me today for the incredible story of the Phoenix Lights. Do we have proof that aliens visited Arizona back in 1997? Not quite, but there is enough evidence to suggest we may never know the full truth about this case. What did those witnesses see? And how could so many people be mistaken? Let's take a deeper dive into this intriguing case. And now we're going to explore the weirdest lights ever seen over the city of Phoenix, Arizona. On March 13th, 1997, millions of Americans were glued to their television sets watching the live broadcast of the NBA game between the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Lakers. For 2 hours, the viewers enjoyed an intense match. However, just before the final quarter began, the cameras panned upwards to show the night sky. Suddenly, a huge V-shaped object was floating above the stadium. It had bright lights that seemed to stretch for miles. Then, just as suddenly, the object disappeared from sight. The following evening, similar objects were seen again, except this time they stayed longer. These lights were arranged in a V or arrow shape and moved slowly across the night sky. They appeared to glide silently without any visible means of propulsion. Moreover, the lights formed different geometrical shapes such as triangles, squares, and circles. One eyewitness, Mark D'Antonio, said the sighting was like nothing I've ever seen or could have imagined. Another witness, Diana Casada, said she saw something that resembled massive luminous kite. Even more alarming was that these flying formations seemed to be right outside people's windows. So how high above the ground were they? According to one eyewitness, the bottom of the V-shaped object was at the same level as the moon, which is around 60 miles above the Earth. If that's true, then the total length of the object would have been well over 100 miles. That's roughly the distance between London and Brighton in the UK. Perhaps even more disturbing than the actual sighting itself was the silence. These objects made no noise whatsoever. You would expect something of that size to produce a roaring sound, yet some witnesses said they could hear a pin drop during the sightings. A former police officer named Ted Rowe was one of the lucky few who managed to capture photos of the event. In one image, we can see a triangle-shaped object hovering just above the horizon. Another photo shows us V-shaped objects flying in the same direction. Rowe explained his photographs didn't do the event justice, because when he took the pictures, the objects were actually much closer than they appeared. Many of the locals started to panic. People rushed outside to get a better look at the mysterious spectacle. Many felt an overwhelming sense of dread, while others stood in awe. Some people were so frightened they called up local radio stations asking what was happening. The calls came in from all over the state of Arizona. Many people also phoned the emergency services, but they received no answers. As far as they were concerned, the authorities were keeping quiet about the real nature of the mysterious lights. By the end of March, the sightings had stopped, but that didn't bring people any peace of mind. They had so many questions. What was the meaning of the lights? Why did the government keep quiet? Were the aliens friendly or hostile? Unfortunately, the officials didn't seem willing to answer any of these questions. So let's consider the official explanation. The American government said the lights were flares being released by military aircraft. They insisted these were simply flares being dropped from C-130 transport planes that were taking part in a night training exercise. Surely this must be true, right? Well, some witnesses disagree. They say the lights were way too big to be flares. Furthermore, there are photos of the event that show the lights moving in straight lines and changing direction. It seems highly unlikely that flares would exhibit that kind of movement. Another problem is that there were way too many lights. According to the officials, only 48 flares were dropped that night, yet there were hundreds of lights in the sky. Something else that doesn't add up is that the next day after the first sighting, the military issued a statement saying the flares were going to be bigger. How could they increase the size of a flare, and why would they need to increase the size if they were trying to cover up an alien invasion? Even Arizona Governor Fife Symington became involved in the discussion. He went on CNN to claim that the lights were definitely flares. He said, "I saw them, and I know what they were." However, a year later, after much prodding from UFO investigators, Simon admitted he got it wrong. He said he now believed the lights were something we don't understand. That's quite a change of heart. What's even more puzzling is that the military kept changing their story. First, they said the flares had malfunctioned. Then they said there had been a miscommunication. Finally, they said they had no idea what caused the lights. This constant shifting of the goalposts suggests the government didn't really know what caused the phenomenon. So what did the witnesses see? Could it have been an alien fleet? We may never know for sure. But there's a lot of evidence to support the idea that the official story is false. Let's consider the fact that hundreds of people saw the lights. If you think about it, the chances of that many people being mistaken is pretty slim. Sure, there were no physical traces left behind, like burn marks on the ground or crashed spaceships. But there is a reason to believe that an advanced civilization wouldn't leave traces behind. After all, we know that the top-secret stealth aircraft leave virtually no trace when they fly over our heads, and according to reports, that's exactly what the Phoenix Lights looked like. Some witnesses said they were too silent and too perfect to be human-made. Many suggested they resembled giant stealth bombers, but this leads us to another problem. The United States Air Force kept denying that anything unusual had happened. If that's true, then where did the stealth bombers go? It seems pretty hard to hide an aircraft carrier, especially one the size of a small city. Did the aliens manage to land their ships unnoticed? Perhaps they used cloaking technology. Maybe they landed in remote areas and walked among us. Some people even believe the aliens interacted with the locals. A woman named Ellen was driving home late one night when she noticed a bright light coming from the side window of her car. At first, she thought it was the reflection of a street lamp, but it turned out to be a large egg-shaped object that hovered outside her car. She tried to drive away, but the object kept pace with her. Then it emitted a loud hum and suddenly vanished. We should also take a look at a UFO report filed by an airline pilot. Captain Robert J. Salas was in the middle of a routine flight when he saw something bizarre. There was a large formation of UFOs that floated above the horizon. He watched as several of them descended into the darkness. Salas knew something unusual was going on, so he landed his plane and raced home to grab his telescope. When he returned to the airport, the UFOs were gone, but he was able to spot one object hovering above the mountains to the west of Las Vegas. Then suddenly, 3 more UFOs joined it. They flew in perfect formation and turned rates that were impossible for any aircraft. What makes Salas' report particularly credible is the fact that he wasn't interested in UFOs. He didn't file the report because he wanted to make the headlines. He simply saw something that defied explanation. Here was a man who had flown 27,000 hours in jet aircraft. He had absolutely no reason to lie about seeing UFO. Here's another interesting lead. Several days after the sightings, a man contacted the police. He claimed he had information regarding the origin of the lights. He told the officials that the lights came from a secret military base. Sadly, the police didn't follow up on his tip. They should have investigated this lead, but they chose to ignore it. So in Seagain, it seems the authorities wanted to cover up the truth. To this very day, people still wonder what the Phoenix Lights really were. Hundreds of people saw these objects with their own eyes. Was this a mass hallucination? Perhaps. But remember, these people were spread out over a vast area. It's extremely unlikely that so many people would have the exact same hallucination. So, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.